Rathbun from Completely Quilted. Thank you for purchasing our Be Merry block of the month. You should have all your blocks completed, and now you should have your finishing kit to make your quilts. So you have a couple options with your finishing kit. So I have here on my design wall laid out one of the options for your quilts. So with the first option, you can actually make two quilt tops. You can make a square little wall hanging and a longer rectangular wall hanging. So I already have them positioned the same way that you have your layout for your pattern. You should have plenty of fabric to make your borders for these two small quilts. You can also make one larger quilt, which is what we're making. And you'll have plenty of border fabric to do the checkerboard borders, your binding, and your inner borders. So I'm going to demonstrate the borders to make the larger size quilt. So here I have our large quilt laid out, and now I'm going to demonstrate how the borders are sewn together. Your final piecing on your quilt is going to be doing the checkerboard borders. So there's some tricks to piecing really nice flat straight strip sets. So you're going to sew 3 of these strip sets together, where you're going to have 3 lights and 3 darks. So it's important that when you cut these, you go ahead and trim the selvages. And then when you're sewing these together, you need to alternate. So on this seam, I started at the top here, but when I sewed the next row on, I started at this end. And that way, you're not going to have a bowed strip from your sewing machine dragging all of your stitches the same direction. So it's important that you alternate. And then when you're done, you're going to have a nice, flat, straight strip set. So I'm going to cut these pieces from this strip set 2 inches. So I like to cut from my ruler side. So I'm going to keep all of these segments on the horizontal lines of my ruler. And these are 2-inch segments here. Just like that. So you're going to have to cut all of this up into segments, and then you're going to sew these segments together into longer strips. I have some of my checkerboard borders already sewn together. So you start by sewing long strips like this together, and then you sew them together to create your long checkerboard strip set. So I'm going to cut some more of these, and then I'll demonstrate how that you sew those together. So I'm ready to sew my checkerboard strip sets together. So you're going to have 2 sets for each border. So for example, this border has 6 segments. And when I did my pressing, I pressed everything to the red, so that when I go to sew these together, they'll nest really nicely. So I'm just sewing all of these sets end to end. So I'm going to have 6 segments sewn together end to end to create one long segment. And I'm going to do this twice. So I'll end up having 2 of these segments, and that's going to make up one of my borders. When I sew these sets together, I'm just flipping back the last one that I sewed a pair to, and that allows me to chain piece. Now this whole row has been sewn together. I'm going to do that for the second row as well. Still wanting to make sure that I'm alternating. So I'm going to sew this second strip together, and then I'll have 2 segments that have 6 of each of these little pieces in there. Now I have both of my long border strips sewn together, and I've pressed all of those red segments towards the red. So everything's pressed equally. And then I just flip one of my segments over so that when I sew these 2 together, I'm going to have red right next to white to create the look of a little checkerboard. So I don't pin on this step, but you might feel necessary to pin here at these intersections. But everything should nest really nicely because we pressed everything going towards the same direction. So every time I get to one of those intersections, I just make sure that everything is still nesting really nicely. So you're going to end up with 4 of these checkerboard border strips, 2 for the sides, and then 1 for the top and for your bottom. So now you've sewn all of your checkerboard border strips, and you'll want to cut your green border strip from the length. This means you're going to cut from cut edge to cut edge. You're not going to be cutting from selvage to selvage. So you'll end up with long strips that you don't have to piece. So from that green fabric, you're going to be able to get your inner borders, your outer border, and your binding all from your green fabric strips. So when you're ready to finish your quilt, you'll sew all of your blocks together and then follow the instructions of sewing on your borders. Thank you for purchasing our Be Merry Block of the Month. You're now finished with your quilt, and look forward to seeing all of your finished projects.